Hey, what's going on, everybody? Matt Holmes here, bodysynergytraining.com and tackwads.com, coming to you with another Feature Friday interview. This one I've been waiting for, and finally was able to get John Meadows. I know he's a very busy guy with all his training. He's got a lot of clients that he's training, and then articles he's writing, his own stuff, and his upcoming last show he's training for as well. So I appreciate you taking the time, John.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
I'm excited. I know a lot of people have been looking forward to this one. You know, when I mentioned it months ago that we're trying to figure it out. So I'm glad we got it. And, as I was telling you before the call, I wanted to kind of let you explain a little bit more of your background for guys that don't know who you are or have heard your name around, but they kind of don't know how you got started, what you're doing now, and, with the last show coming up.
Yeah, well, I'm 42 years old, and I started competing when I was 13. I was just your typical kid. I was in football, track, wrestling, baseball. I really loved football. But, when those sports ended and I realized I wasn't talented enough to go to the next level in those sports, bodybuilding, it had been there all along. I had been training. It kind of took the forefront, and I thought, hey, this is another way that I can continue to compete and work hard to be really good at something. And, even at a young age, I felt like, this is a pretty cool sport because there's a genetic component involved, but to a large degree, what I'm going to put into this is what I'm going to get out of it. And I was always a very hard worker. So, through my teenage years, I continued to train hard. Got into college. I was still competing then in bodybuilding. I was doing well, and I got kind of a lazy streak in college. I did finish and get a degree, but I didn't pursue the level of education that I had initially set out to pursue, which was a master's and then something higher than that. But I was forced to try to figure out when I got out of college, okay, what do you want to do with your life now? And at the time, I was working part-time at a gym. I was doing a little bit of training, and I ended up getting into the corporate world. I was, I was in a situation where I was working at a gym where I didn't really make a lot of money. It was kind of a poor side of town. If you told somebody you charge $25 an hour, that they'd look at you like, "Oh, you crazy? That's a lot of money." So I didn't really have a lot of money. You figure by the time taxes hit you and the gym takes their cut, there's not much left. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to go get a quote unquote real job and have a steady salary, and I'll just continue to lift and compete as a hobby. And so I got into the corporate world. And I started off actually as a recruiter for a staffing company, and then I was in a sales position there. I did that, and the cool thing about that job was I got to talk to a lot of hiring managers of different companies. These were people that were looking to hire people. So, at one point I thought, man, these jobs that I'm trying to find for people are really good jobs. What if I could do one of these jobs? So, there was various types of project management positions that I was working on, and I asked one of the people who had developed a pretty good relationship with, hey, what do you think about me taking this job for you? And the guy was like, yeah, great. I didn't think you'd be interested, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that. So I got into project management, and it was more on the technology side back then. But it gave me a project management background. I got the certifications, which back then, those certifications were a pretty big deal. Now they're kind of, they're pretty common now. But I think I might have been the 19,000th person to get my project management professional certification. But it led me into a career working at a bank, JP Morgan Chase Bank, as a project manager. And I managed some rather large projects. And all through this time, I was still training, I was still competing, and I never lost sight of that. I still love the sport, and you know, eventually along the road, uh, the demands of a high level project manager and the demands of coaching kind of collided, and it was like, there's only so much time in a day. So I had to figure out, um, what do you want to do? And long story short, I opted to um, pursue coaching full time, and I left my job at the bank on very good terms. And that's been, a few years back, and I've built up a pretty good business. And it's kind of led me to where I am today. I've obviously done a lot of writing and coaching, and it's been really, really fun. It's been much more demanding than I thought. I don't even want to tell you my work schedule is, but so that's kind of how I got to where I am today. From A to B, I trained the whole time. I was always competing. It was just a matter of what was I going to do for stability, and so there was kind of an alternate career path, but eventually it all kind of led me to where I am today.
That's pretty awesome. And, and I'm sure it doesn't sound like you were unhappy with all the stuff you were doing, but it seems like now I would say you're probably, you're doing what was a hobby. So I'm sure you enjoy doing it a lot more now. It's like you're training and you're getting paid for it and training other people and coaching them. And, just, is that something that you would say it wasn't that you weren't happy with what you're doing, but you are better doing now of like a hobby, or as people say, follow your passion? And yeah, you might bust your ass, but it's different than per se a job.
Yeah. Well, this whole notion of follow your passion is in my opinion a little silly, because your passion may not involve any generation of revenue. And if you have a family, how are you going to support your family? So I firmly believe in following your passion, but I also don't believe in being delusional. There's a fine line there. I know a lot of people in bodybuilding that, kind of took the delusional side of it, and, they really struggle now just paying basic bills. I was always happy at the bank. I was there. I worked in banking for 12 years. And the projects were always fascinating to me. They were very complex. They were very difficult. I had large teams of, people from different types of areas. There would be technical people. There would be people who were skilled in training. There'd be people who were skilled with the business practices. All kinds of, auditor. I mean, there were a lot of people in the teams. So it was pretty cool orchestrating the meetings and understanding, what had to be done from week to week, month to month. You had to be very detail oriented. You had to really have good people skills, because if you didn't get along with people, your time would be pretty limited in that type of role. So I always enjoyed it, but it just wasn't to the level of enjoyment that I get from coaching people. So it was kind of a cool problem to have. It was like, okay, I got this problem. I like both of these, but I like this one a little more.
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh my God, I'm miserable. How am I going to make it through the day? I didn't feel like that. I didn't wake up and dread the day. I enjoyed meeting with folks at work. I'm a very schedule regimented type person. So I'd love the discipline, getting up at the same time, eating at the same time. I actually liked that. And working in the corporate world certainly provided that for me. I have clients now that work in the corporate world, and they're always like, "Well, how'd you do it?" I'm like, "Well, it was actually easier then than it is now." I mean, you took your lunch. You had, I had everything on my desk. So 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I drank my shake. I might have had a handful of nuts or whatever, but it was very structured. It was very easy to follow, and I like that. So yeah, I mean, it was different, but by no means was I unhappy or miserable, or I always would tell people, if you don't like what you're doing, then you either change jobs, or you change roles within a company, or you just quit. Do something. Um, because in the corporate world, you do get a lot of miserable people. You do have to deal with a lot of folks like that. All so and so is taking credit for my work and blah 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 blah. And I would have no problem telling people. I was pretty known for it. I'd be pretty straightforward, and I'd say, "Man, if you're so unhappy, then just go somewhere else. Life's too short." So, I also had back in 2005, I had a sickness that nearly killed me, and that also provided a pretty different perspective for me on what a big deal actually was. A lot of times, we get pretty worked up over certain things, and the reality is, most of the stuff you're getting worked up about is probably not a big deal. It probably is not a big deal. So that experience was also pretty instrumental in me um, taking a broader view and understanding that a lot of the problems and challenges we have are not that big of a deal. You have a family member that has cancer, that's a big deal. If if somebody says something bad about you on Facebook, that's not a big deal. So, so all perspective.
Yeah, and that's it's interesting how you always hear. It's like you hear people that are maybe on the wrong path and have something bad happen, or just are. It's not like they're on a bad path; they're not enjoying life, but it still happens. Like in your case, it's not like you were doing anything bad, you hated your life, and it opened your eyes, but it was something that still made you realize those things. And you're right. There's a lot of basically shit that everybody worries about. At the end of the day, it's really not going to make that big of a difference. Or a year down the line, like, it's not life-threatening. It's not going to ruin you, your family, like you're saying, the Facebook or this, like, oh, I'm stuck in traffic. Like, really? Like, is it going to kill you? Like, all this stuff that people stress about, really not a big deal. Yeah, there are daily stressors, things like that, we're human beings. Nobody's perfect. It's going to happen. But when you look on the outside like that force you to kind of see the big picture, a lot of people sweat the small stuff when they really shouldn't, because there's plenty of other things. And that's where a lot of people don't enjoy life these days, I've noticed, is they're worried about all this other shit instead of enjoying everything around them. And I made a video about that, I think it was last week, telling everybody to kind of just stop worrying about all the small things and being in autopilot and stressing over this or that, and just look around, see the big picture, enjoy all these things, and all that little stuff basically kind of tends to go away.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just perspective,
Yeah, it's like I always say, the mindset is key, and that's where it all kind of plays from. As like if you didn't have the mindset you had with your training, you wouldn't train nearly as hard and all the crazy shit that people see you do. If your mindset wasn't in it, it wouldn't be there. You wouldn't be doing that and what you're doing now. Like, it's such a huge thing in all aspects, training and daily life.
We're built to withstand short-term high pressure. It's the chronic stress that just looms over your head, that becomes part of your personality. If somebody said to me, what's the absolute, excuse me, what's the absolute worst thing you can do health-wise? I would say be constantly stressed out. That's exactly what my first answer would be. And our bodies aren't meant to handle that. And, there's all kinds of dysfunctions that can happen because of that. And, but short-term stress, like training hard and pushing yourself, your body's meant to handle that. It'll adapt and it'll do well with that. And it'll turn into a positive thing. So, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much where I stand on that. I always tell people that even people that are around you, if they're negative or if they're bringing you down, get them out of your life. I call them life suckers. If you have life suckers, or you can even call them soul suckers. If you have people like that around, you get them out of your life. It's a little more complicated if it's a family member, but you know, you can still stay away from them. It doesn't mean you're not there for people during hard times. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is people who are constantly negative and just want to bring you down and drag you down. Stay away from those kind of people. I made that decision when I worked at the bank. It was very black and white. One day I literally sat down and said, okay, from now on, anybody who, you know, who fits kind of this life sucker picture I have in my head, I'm going to stay away from them. I'm not going to deal with them any more than I have to.
Yeah.
And my life got better as a result of that. You know, they really did.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, you know, though, like people say, you know, whatever you want to call it, they want to drag you down to their level because misery loves company. And it's true.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And the cool thing is the opposite is true. If you have awesome friends that support you and that lift you up, that you know that are always there for you, and if you kind of really appreciate those relationships, then good things will happen. You know, that was another thing about when I got sick in 2005 was I had some friends that were just there for me the whole time, and it was just like, wow, these guys are amazing. I mean, they're amazing. And guys were stopping in after work every single day to visit me at the hospital for months on end, every day. And I was like, man, these guys are really cool. And of course, they're still really good friends with me this day. And so, you know, hold the people who are just the opposite, who, you know, hold on tight to them and, you know, stay close with those kinds of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are, you know, as they say, you know, get rid of the people, like you just said, you know, get rid of the bad people in your life and search for more people that are like you, that are going to bring you up or be there to add, not basically subtract from your life.
Yep.
All right. One thing I wanted to bring up that, you know, I was making a couple notes here. I told you, you know, we got a couple questions, but I made a few notes. And one thing that I wanted to bring up, because I'm sure you hear it, you know, you did mention that you hear it from clients and things of, you know, how did you do that? How is it so, you know, how do you stay on this schedule? And I know, and you know, it's when you have a schedule and you're very schedule oriented and you stick to it, it might seem easy. I mean, it might seem hard, but when you do that, as you know, it's a lot easier to stick to just a schedule and do that, and the rest will figure it out. You know, you'll find a way to move your life basically around that schedule. When you just stick to it, It pretty much falls into place, and you don't have to worry about, well, what am I going to do this or what am I? Don't schedule shit when you're supposed to do this, when you're supposed to do that. It's like people overcomplicate things more than it needs to be.
Yeah, keep a calendar. It's pretty simple. Keep a calendar, and it may mean that you can't get to someone for 3 weeks or 6 weeks, but you at least you'll get to them. And you know, this is one of the things that when I left the corporate world was really hard for me. Was I lost that schedule initially, and I was kind of all over the place. Okay, when do I want to train? Well, today I'll train at 11. Then the next day I was like, well, I'll train at 1. And that's okay to a point, but then if all of a sudden other things start, if you're not careful and you're really busy, it can become like just a big convoluted mess. And so I think that if you keep it simple, you keep a calendar, you prioritize what you know you have to do, build around it. And the hard thing for me is you have to tell people no, and you have to sometimes you just can't do things that you want to do, and that was a hard lesson for me to learn too. You know, you might be booked, completely booked. And you'll have somebody say, oh, John, I'm competing in 6 weeks. I need help really bad right now. I know you can't get to me according to your website, but I need help right now. Well, you know, there was a time when I would say, okay, we'll figure it out. Now what I say is, okay, let me look at my schedule. And my schedule's booked. So now I got to look at what's this going to cost me? Okay, what's going to cost me? I could do this on Saturday when I'm supposed to be at my kid's t-ball game. I could do this on Friday when I should be at date night with my wife. So then you start looking at those things, and it's like, okay, now we, I'm sorry, I got to say no, because those are things that are non-negotiable with me. I got to spend time with my family. I don't want to be a bad guy, but that's just the way it is. So, you have to, when you have a schedule and you're busy, you also have to learn to say no. You can't please everybody. Just the people you are working with at that time, please them. Um, so that's another thing that was pretty hard for me, was just learning to say no. I'm getting better at it now, but that's hard to do, man, when you want to help everybody.
Yeah, yeah, I could understand that. Wanting to anybody that comes to you, especially if they're genuine and they're like, I really do need help, and you really want to help them to, say for you, get with better in their competition. That's what you do. So I could understand where it's extremely hard when that's what you want to do. It's not like, I could say no. It's not that big of a deal. It's like, no, you want to do it, so it's extremely hard. But like you said, and some people might take it wrong, whatever. As you can't let it bother you because, as you said, your family, like those things are at the top list. That's what you're doing, why you're doing. So you have all this with your family, that stability, as you talked about earlier. That's important. As soon as you start to take away those things, it becomes easier to take away next time. And then the next time, and then the next time, and it's just downhill from there.
Yep.
So
that's absolutely right. Yep.
that one, I like that, and it's within on that of kind of going back to the schedule of, if you stick with the schedule and then you're like, well, I can kind of move it this time, or I can kind of, it's just, then it's going to be hard to stick to a schedule. Where if you actually stick to it, it's a lot easier than it actually seems to be. It seems like this giant mountain of a task to get done. When you do it, you're like, wow, it's actually a lot simpler when I stick to the schedule.
Yep.
All right, I wanted to bring up also, because I know we're going to start talking about, I was telling you about like the lean bulk, things like that. I wanted to bring up the whole mountain dog diet and everything. Because I've had people that are like, oh, I've heard of John and I've heard of the mountain dog diet. I kind of want to, people want to know, I know more about it and, you and everything that you're doing.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say go to mountaindogdiet.com. We actually just launched our new website last week. We're still kind of tweaking it. Still a bug here and there, but the other site was about 4 years old, so I had some things I wanted to do a little differently, and it's a pretty kick-ass site. So go there first of all.
Yeah, I did see that. I've been seeing, I forgot, a bunch of people are sharing it on Facebook, and I was like, oh, let me look at it. And I was like going through it the other day, and I'm like, ooh, this is really cool, clicking everything. And
it's getting better. There's still some bugs, but I wanted it to just be an awesome experience for people. And we're getting there. I will keep pushing hard to make the site better and better and better. I think it's a pretty daggone good site right now, but we don't, I'm not going to rest on my laurels. Probably 3 or 4 years, I'll completely take this one down and do another one. But the first of all, the name Mountain Dog has nothing to do with anything other than my love for breed of a dog. I love Bernese Mountain Dogs, so there's no hidden meaning behind it. I know people talk about caveman diets, eating what cavemen eat. I'm not literally trying to eat what mountain dogs eat. I can tell you that mountain dogs will eat anything because I have mountain dogs and they will eat anything. So if I were truly going to say follow a mountain dog diet, you would just eat anything and everything. A lot of it is common sense. What I think is common sense, the approach I have to eating, there's nothing extreme about it. There's a health emphasis on it, first of all, which is sorely lacking in the bodybuilding world. The typical bodybuilding person will say, well, I'm already doing all these bad things to my body, so why should I even care? Well, no, that's exactly why you should care. It's damage control. It's be smart. And if you're not in bodybuilding, then great. It's also wise to be smart. There's nothing extreme about it. I'm not an anti-carb or anti-fat guy. Extreme diets never made any sense to me. They make sense only from the perspective if you're a couple weeks out from a show and you've got to kind of push the gas and push the envelope a little bit. But as far as trying to follow a certain eating pattern, I found that extreme types of eating will just never work. I mean, they just won't. I've never told anybody that they couldn't have one of their favorite foods. You know, if you told me you like chocolate, I would never tell you, okay, from now on, we're never going to have chocolate again. That's just silly, in my opinion. You need to find foods that people enjoy, and then maybe that's 10 or 20% of the diet, and the other 80% are maybe it's not chocolate and donuts; it's more nutrient dense food. But my point is so we stay away from extremes. The way I structure carbohydrates are to support energy, to support training, and when you really need energy. So many times what I'll do is the majority of the carbohydrates in the diets that I have with athletes will be centered around training. There's always exceptions. Obviously, sometimes I work with people who are massive, and sometimes I work with people who just have incredibly fast metabolisms. So, those folks maybe they'll have carbohydrates in every meal, but just the general premise behind it is, you know what, when you train as hard as we train, I have very difficult training routines, and they're done very methodically. You need to support that. And, it goes beyond just having energy even. I mean, I'm eating carbs a certain way during training. I'm not eating carbs, I'm drinking carbs, a certain type of carb that'll give you a nice insulin response, and that'll help manage muscle protein breakdown so you can recover quicker. So there's reasons why carbohydrates are around training. I include healthy fats. I think hormonally and just general health, I mean, all the way down to your cell membranes, you got to have healthy fats. I think it's crazy to take fats out of diets and just say, I'm going to eat low fat forever, unless there's some kind of medical condition. There are a few medical conditions where you have to do that. But again, I would call that common sense. I'm going to need a lot of energy when I train, so I'm going to have more of my carbs at that point in time. So readily usable fuel source, and it's going to provide some other benefits too, hormonally while you work out, insulin being one of the things. And these other times when I'm not working out, we're going to have some healthy fat with our proteins. A lot of people think that I'm kind of an organic tree hugger type. Organic is one of those things to me. It's kind of like the unions and work. It was there's a great cause behind it, but it just got kind of twisted. Organic in its purest form is a very good thing, but when you go to the store and you see organic Cheetos and things like that, that's just a bunch of marketing people that have grabbed the term. They're trying to make money off of it. I like for people to have certain foods organically, but the last thing in the world I tell people is everything you eat has to be organic. That's crazy. And much of the food, whether you get it organic or not, there's no difference in the nutrient profile at all. But in foods that tend to be fattier, like butter, for instance, that come from animals that are pretty jam full of chemicals and maybe been exposed to pesticides, that stuff does get in their fat cells, and then that does carry on to their food. And then when you eat it, it can move into your fat cells. That just happens. So, there's little bit of an organic piece to it. I just want to bring that up because I think a lot of people hear about what I'm writing and they think, oh, it's organic everything. That's not true. What else can we talk about? So I would say that there's I would say too that I follow this 80-20 rule for the most part, meaning the foods that you really like. I just threw chocolate out as an example. I don't like to take foods that people. I love pancakes, for example. So I'll have pancakes every Friday. I love donuts. Every Sunday morning after church, the family, we go to Tim Hortons and we get a box of donuts. And I have two 5-year-olds that absolutely love it. Yes, I even do that all the way up to a show. So, um, but it's so enjoy life, enjoy eating, enjoy. You don't have to be a social misfit to compete. You do have to tighten the reins up a little bit, but there's certain times where you can have refeeds or cheat meals or whatever the word of the day is that actually benefit you physiologically. Um, but it allows you to be social and with your family. I hate it when I hear people say, today is my birthday, but I'm a month out from a show, so my daughter got me a birthday cake, but I'm not going to eat it because I'm hardcore. You're not hardcore. You're dumb. That's not hard. That's not hardcore. Hardcore is going to war, fighting for our country. That's hardcore. You're just dumb. You should have built your diet that day to accommodate those calories and enjoyed that with your family.
Yeah.
So a live life meal. But so that's the kind of the overview of how I look at nutrition. We could certainly dig really deep into any topic you want, but that's the 10,000-foot view.
Yeah. Okay. One question I get asked often that with that you were kind of bringing up, or what are some of your favorite fats that you use for people, healthy fats? Because I'm always getting asked, well, what should I use? Should I have this? Should I have that? And, it's always like, nuts and avocados, things like that, or like the butters. But what are some of the most common ones you use with clients?
Well, first of all, I like variety. So it may not be a lot of any one fat, but there's maybe some egg yolks in breakfast because the person's eating whole eggs. They may cook the eggs in a teaspoon of coconut oil. We may have some avocado in a salad. We may have some nuts in a salad. We may have some Ezekiel bread with some organic butter on it. So there's a lot of fats that I like. I don't tend to eat a lot of any one of them though. Like for instance, coconut oil is a great fat. There's an awesome article on it in my website last month that Bill Willis wrote. He's a really astute PhD. It's actually got some information that I think would pretty much shock people in terms of the stability and some things that happen when it's heated. But coconut oil is nice. I might have somebody have a tablespoon a day. That's not a whole lot. I don't think that's going overboard.
Yeah.
If somebody has 2 pieces of toast a day or 4 pieces of toast, I'll have them put a little organic butter on it. If somebody has salads, I like for them to put fruit or nuts in their salads. So, all kinds of different nuts. Selenium is good in Brazil nuts. The monosaturated fat is really high in things like cashews and almonds. I certainly like the nut butters, peanut butter, cashew butter, and almond butter. They're very good to incorporate into a shake. Obviously the fish, like a fatty source from fish, like salmon or mackerel, if you're into that. What's the other one I always eat? Sardines. I eat those every once in a while. So omega-3, polyunsaturated fatty acids. So I try to get a little bit of everything and not a ton of one thing. I try to have a pretty good balance. I couldn't tell you exactly how many grams of each I eat, but I would just tell you that I try to keep a good balance.
That's pretty good. I thought, and that gives a good broad view of, for everybody that's always asking, well, I'm supposed to eat good fats. Well, what's a good fat? And I think that's a pretty good example, and a variety of them, as you're saying, from the butters to the nuts to the oils and to the fish, and getting that good variety in there. So that's perfect.
Yeah. And they all have different benefits to your body. I mean, all of those things have different benefits and do different things. So that's why from a health standpoint, it's good to rotate them and use different ones.
Perfect. And then, so kind of playing off that's going to go into the fat aspect, but people being fat really is the whole lean bulk, as we were talking about. I know you've been writing a lot about that. People are talking about it more of bulking, which, as and everybody, is the old kind of term with it is, bulking and pretty much being fat at the same time. And as I've seen you write, where a lot of that weight gain isn't muscle, it's just weight gain in general, where it's not quality scale weight that you want to see.
Yeah.
So kind of what's some more that you can give to people on that with kind of breaking that old mentality and what they should be doing and the ranges? Because I know you say, there's a range people if they start going above a certain percentage, then they need to change things.
Well, I think first of all, if you look at what bodybuilders have done classically, bodybuilders have let their weight go up 40 or 50 pounds, and then they've had to really punish themselves with unbelievable amounts of cardio and low carb dieting to get into shape. And through that process, they lose a lot of muscle. Now, they'll tell you they don't, but I can tell you that it's really difficult to gain muscle in a advanced trained athlete. That it's different if somebody has taken a break or if they've suddenly introduced hormones to their plan. But just generally speaking, it's really hard to even maintain muscle while you diet. And then when you mix in all the cardio and 2 hours a day plus 50 grams of carbs, it's a recipe for muscle loss. People can get away with it to a degree because of chemical usage. But if you take that out of the equation, these guys would lose so much muscle, it's unbelievable. Over the years, I used to get up to 260 myself, and I would compete at about 215. And, so then one year I started at 250. And, I still got down to about 215 before I looked right. And then one year I started 240. And all of a sudden I was competing around 218, 221. And then I started to diet at 230, 236, 237, and I competed at 225 or 226. It was like the easier I made my pre-contest phase, the less extreme stuff I had to do, the more I was able to keep muscle, the more I was able to eat. That's just me. That's just one example. I would never use my own experience as a blanket rule for everybody, but I can tell you that with the people that I've worked with, the ones who don't let their fat get out of control are the ones who have the best muscle gain. And if you think about what's going on with insulin sensitivity, it makes it makes total sense. If you're bulking up, you're eating a lot of calories, and I'm sure a lot of it is in the form of carbohydrate. So you've constantly got high insulin levels. Constantly high insulin levels, which, by the way, is one of the best predictors for heart disease there is, outside of any cholesterol lipid panel type reading. And high insulin levels are actually much more indicative of heart disease. So you get constantly high insulin levels, and your body has to respond to that. Your insulin receptors that sit on the cell membranes get a little worn out. They're like, man, I'm tired of working and sucking all this glucose out of his blood and putting it in his muscle cells or even fat cells, but mostly muscle cells. So I'm just going to let that glucose just sit in his blood. I'm just going to let his blood sugar get real high. And even inside your cells, you have carrier proteins that are produced. GLUT4 is probably the thing you've heard of, a glucose transporter. GLUT4 translocation is a process by which you can get glucose into your muscle cell as well. All those processes just break down when you have constantly high insulin levels. It's just a homeostatic mechanism. It's just your body saying, man, I'm tired of this. And so if you can't get a lot of nutrients into your muscle, how is it going to grow optimally? It's not. The only thing that's going to grow is your fat cells. So what happens is you see these guys, they eat after a show. They're pretty insulin sensitive, muscle and fat cells actually, but muscle cells are very insulin sensitive. And when muscle cells are very insulin sensitive, I like to push the gas a little bit and try to gain muscle because it's hard to be at that level of sensitivity. So when I have that opportunity, I like to take advantage of it. So you eat, you look great, you get bigger. You start putting pictures on Facebook about how you're 20 pounds bigger, but you're just as lean. All your buddies are congratulating you on how much muscle you put on. You feel great. So you keep adding calories. You notice it starts to slow down. So you think, I guess got to eat more, right? I'm just going to push more calories down. So then all of a sudden your pumps aren't as good. All of a sudden you start getting softer, you start getting fatter, and then you start getting really frustrated. And you say, man, I'm going to just suck it up and I'm going to put more calories down. And then you just start getting fat. You're gaining no muscle at all. And if you are lifting more weight, it's because of leverage. It's because your gut's bigger. It's something like that. Your insulin sensitivity is basically shot, and it's going to make it really difficult to gain muscle. Now, what is that point for everybody? There is no set answer for that, but I will tell you, if you think about your off seasons or a period of time where you were trying to gain weight, you'll remember a time when all of a sudden your pumps weren't as good. All of a sudden, you weren't quite as mentally as tough, but physiologically, your pumps weren't as good. That tells me glucose isn't getting into your muscles efficiently as it was. You start getting softer, and then no matter how much you increase your calories, you just seem to get fatter. When that happens, there should be bells and whistles going off in your head that says, hey, I got to back my calories down because additional calories are doing nothing beneficial for me at all at this point. And I try. This is what I try to teach people. When you start to see these kinds of things in the off season, we pull down your carbohydrates. We have a period of time where we pull carbohydrates down so your body doesn't just start putting fat on like crazy. And we try to reestablish a little insulin sensitivity. It might take 4 weeks. It might take 8 weeks. But we do that, and then we start pushing calories again when your body is more primed to handle it. So you got to kind of listen to your body, and that's where there's a little bit of art behind it. But it is sometimes very, very noticeable. You might have 3 weeks where you just have unbelievable pumps. And then all of a sudden out of the blue for 2 weeks, it's like, man, what happened? I don't even know I didn't do anything. I didn't stop eating. I didn't miss a meal. That's what's happening a lot of the time. And, that's something I see with many, 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 many people. Generally, I tell people, you should always see the outline of your abs. If you have a gut with no trace of abs at all, you probably went a little too far. In terms of body fat percentage, part of that depends on how people store body fat, but I don't see a reason for people to really go over 12 or 13%. I mean, most people that I work with have their best gains when number one, they're the most insulin sensitive, but number two, these guys that are staying at about 9, 10, 12, 13%, they seem to be doing really well. The guys that are at 18%, 20%, not so much. And then it becomes a real challenge to try to get them down to contest condition. It becomes very difficult because now all of a sudden we've got some serious fat we got to plow through. Whereas the other guys, you might take carbs out of their morning meal and that's all they need for like a month. And all of a sudden their body will just tighten right up because they're so efficient. So those are just kind of some high level things that I see. Just some things to think about.
It's interesting too, because as you're, going through all of that, I can see, as earlier you said, a lot of what you do is also has the health aspect to it, which is obviously extremely important, and the muscle growth as well. So kind of what you're doing is going for the best, fat to lean mass ratio you can get, but there plays the health aspect in it of how you're saying how bad it is. If you look at these guys doing the bulking, cutting over and over and over after so many years, your body kind of changes a lot on that, and it really wrecks it. So the health aspect, yeah, of course you want to have someone be as lean as they can, put on as much muscle, and then cut down into competition shape. But the longevity of that as well with the health plays a major role into all of that.
Well, and there's actually a lot of scientific data that shows these big yo-yo diets going way up and coming way down. Every time you repeat that, it's harder to come down. I wish I could think of the researchers who brought that to light, but there's actually some very good scientific data that tells us if you want to play that game, it's fine, but it's going to be harder and harder and harder to get in shape.
I think you
We
put
used to
that in
notice it back.
your T Nation article, right? That was talking about that. I think it
Yeah,
has that in it. Okay, perfect.
yeah,
People can check that out on T Nation too to get some if they want to see the. Some people are they want to see the science stuff. Some people just want it to tell them what the hell to do, but they can go check it out on T Nation then.
yeah.
Okay, perfect. The next thing I know a lot of people are wanting to know on because they see, you and Dave doing all this crazy stuff with you. Some of it, as you guys say, is really not scientific. You just are having fun, like the cattle prods and things like that. But
There's no science there at all. Trust me.
when I first saw it, I'm like, this has to be a joke. And then I saw, I'm like, yeah, they're just joking around. So
Yeah.
with that, I was telling you, Croc and I were talking. I've been doing some experimenting with it. So we'll go into many different, kind of some of the insane stuff that you do that you're kind of known for, but also I know people are asking about occlusion training and the blood flow restrictions. So I wanted you to kind of touch on that, and then we'll kind of expand from there.
Well, I've been experimenting with it for probably about a year now, maybe. I learned from a guy named Jeremy Lineky. Jeremy is in the States here. He's probably the most well versed on it of anybody. They were actually doing this over in I want to say Japan. They called it Kyatsu Training years ago, years and years ago, decades ago. And I remember Dr. Serrano telling me about it decades ago, and I remember just laughing, saying, "You are nuts, man! That's crazy." And then, I started doing a little more research to what Jeremy was doing. I want to give Jeremy credit because he's the one that I've learned this from. And, there was a method to it. You couldn't tighten the band up all the way. You're allowing blood into the muscle, but not out of it. What's causing the growth? Is it trapped local growth factors? What is it? I don't think they even know yet, to be honest. I think it's an ongoing discovery. But so I started tinkering around with it for my limbs, for my bis and tris, for my quads and hamstrings. And you obviously get a crazy, crazy, crazy painful pump with it. But, it was pretty neat because all the studies that I saw that Jeremy did, they were using low loads and they were getting just as much hypertrophy as those that were using heavy loads. What I would say to that is I would first of all say, please don't misunderstand me. Please don't think that you can drop all your good heavy basic stuff and replace it with this and you'll do just as fine, just as well. But what I am saying is it's a nice adjunct to a really good program. Specifically, I'm a little older and I get a little beat up. There were some days where, like in all the attachments in my greater trochanter hurt, so leg pressing was really painful. So I said, you know what, I'm not going to do any leg pressing today. I'm just going to do some occlusion training, and I'm going to do, at that phase of the workout, so I'm going to do some leg extensions. So that's what I did. Or, my elbows were hurting, so I didn't really want to use much weight on my bis or tris. So I'll do some occlusion training for my bis and tris. And while I was using those techniques, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, I did not lose any muscle. So that was pretty positive for me because now you've got something that when you're banged up, you're a little injured, there's still a way to at least keep the muscle. At a bare minimum, you're at least going to keep your muscle and not lose it. There's nothing more frustrating than building a lot of muscle than watching it, evaporate.
Yeah.
So I think for people who have injuries or I think it's incredibly valuable. I think just as an adjunct to a good basic training program, I think it's a great addition. I don't, I've heard people's concerns about you're going to do arterial damage and all this stuff. You're going to cause blood clots. That's kind of funny to me because I was kind of born and raised in the powerlifting world. And so every week I saw guys wearing squat suits that were so tight, their legs turned purple for 2 hours at a time.
Yeah.
Okay. This is it may be anecdotal, but it's one hell of a case study because I've seen hundreds upon hundreds of people that do this. I've never heard of one of those guys having a blood clot or any arterial or venous issues. So I think if it's done right, I don't see it as something that's potentially harmful. You shouldn't have the bands even so tight that your limb turns purple anyway, because you've got to still allow blood into the muscle. So from a safety perspective, I feel pretty confident in saying that, there's probably more research. It's still, relatively young as far as the technique goes. And even though it's been around, I think now they're starting to do a lot of research on it. But I would say it seems like a pretty safe technique. It seems very valuable. I'm always a nuts and bolts kind of guy. I'm never going to give up the basic stuff. But sometimes you just got to open your mind up. I know for me, I thought, man, this looks retarded. This just looks dumb. Why am I going to do this? But I tried it. And I remember the first day I did it, I used leg curls. And I stood up off the leg curl arm. I literally had to hold on to something, almost fell down. And my hamstring was just hanging off my leg. It was so full of blood. And I was like, wow, that is cool. So I think it's a good technique. I think it's viable. I think I would use it carefully. Don't, if you're healthy, don't drop all your other stuff for it. Just add a little bit. What I typically do is I'll do a set of 15 to 25 reps. I'll rest for 30 seconds. Then I'll do as many as I can. Then I'll rest for 30 seconds and do as many as I can. Then I'll repeat it. So I do 4 total sets. That's another protocol I got from Jeremy. I just liked it so much. That's what I've been using. And so if you look at the amount of time you actually have the wrap on, it's really not that long. Let's say you do 80 reps total. Let's say you're taking 30 seconds. You probably got the wrap on for 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then when you're done, you take it off. So it's not like you're cranking it on there and you're leaving it on for 2 hours. But that's the way I use it typically in terms of sets and reps.
Yeah. And it's good that you mentioned too of there's it's still new, but there is somewhat of a technique building around it. You don't want it too loose. Where I've had it before, I had someone wrap me and I was like, oh, okay, let me see. And I was like, yeah, this has to be tighter because you're not going to get the benefits. And then I've had it where someone tightened it. I was getting through the first set, and then I was like, this is way too tight. Where this might be on the border of this might not be good for me.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt too. It is super fucking painful, especially the day after. My legs have never hurt so bad of trying to walk up and down stairs after I tried it the first time doing, leg extensions and leg curls. I did them as a superset together.
Yeah.
A smart idea.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's brutal.
Yeah.
One of the things there's 2 things that I've noticed anecdotally. Number one is increased vascularity. I've had a lot of people tell me that. I noticed it myself, but I didn't want to say anything. I'm always kind of scared to say things because I'm afraid it's people will jump to the wrong conclusions. But I started noticing some additional vascularity, and I'm already a very vascular person. And all these people started telling me, hey, I got a couple new veins on my legs. I got veins on my arms I haven't seen. I mean, it would make sense if there's a restriction there and your body's maybe there's an adaptive response where your body is, I don't know, maybe it's causing capillary development,
It's funny you mentioned that because I've kind of noticed that, if I'm, sitting down at the desk, or especially I notice it the most in the morning. Obviously I've been laying down, so standing up, there's going to be a blood flow. But I've noticed it where I look down and I'm like, holy shit. Where are all these veins coming from in my legs and in my calves? And that's one thing, I've typically been 6'4". I'm the guy that's always had the fast metabolism. I was really tall and skinny. So my legs, being like a giraffe, have always been really hard. But I've started doing it. I do my squats. I do things like that, deadlifts. I still keep the base. And then I throw that in. especially like you said, I had an injury around January, and I couldn't squat really heavy. I was losing power. I couldn't leg press. I couldn't do anything heavy. So I'm like, let me push the best I can to the border on the squats, and everything else I just did what didn't hurt, but dropped it way down. And I actually, for me, being a taller, skinnier guy, it actually put on size, and I noticed the most with my calves. I
Yeah.
use it a lot on my calf work, whether it's standing or the seated, it's made a huge difference. That's where I notice a lot more veins now is in
Yeah.
the lower portion of my limbs and my calves. I'm like, holy shit. Look,
Yeah.
I've seen these look like that before. And I think just from me experimenting it, I've noticed difference as well with all of that you're saying.
Yeah. The other cool thing I've noticed is that sometimes the muscle is even pumped the next day, which is very cool. I've noticed that a lot with biceps, for instance. You do it with your biceps, wake up the next day and they're still pumped. I'm like, I've never had that before. That's crazy. But those are the two things that I've seen anecdotally that I find pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And the vascularity one just seems, I mean, I've had so many people share stories with me, like you're telling me. I know there's something to it.
Yeah.
You can't be placebo effect. There's no way.
Yeah.
I've just heard too many cases like this to ignore. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that technique. You're getting me kind of fired up. I think I might have to do a bunch today. Today's leg day for me. So in about 3 hours, if you hear somebody screaming in pain, it's probably me.
Yeah, and it is, with the pain thing, like I've told, I was using it on a kid at the gym that, Croc and I were talking about this, and I'm like, let me try it. We did squats, and then I'm like, let's drop the weight, and he was, oh, that's really light. I'm like, trust me,
Yeah,
just
trust me.
trust me right now. And I wrapped his legs because I was like, I know he was going to wrap them too light. He was like freaking out. He's like, oh my, I think something's wrong. They hurt. I'm like, it fucking hurts. I told you. And then he took them off and he was just like, oh. And the next day he's like, this hurts so bad. I'm like, then it works then.
Yeah. Well, in this case, I think pain actually can mean growth. I think there's some things going on there. It'll be real interesting to see in another 5 or 10 years because I'm starting to see everybody's trying it now. I mean, all the people that were laughing about it a year ago, now all of a sudden I see them popping up and they're trying it. So it's like I'm looking forward to another 5 or 10 years. I bet you anything they're going to know a little bit more about why it's working and
Mhm.
the local growth factors that are sitting around the muscle trapped and so forth. So yeah,
Yeah,
pretty cool stuff.
so many people using it is going to have I guess, in the trenches
Yeah,
experiments on it and results. And then, like you said, I'm starting to see more and more scientific studies checking the growth factors and, testing people's strength, if they're losing strength, staying the same, or going up in strength by changing a lot of that. So it is going to be interesting. And, there are more people using it because people see me post pictures of it, doing leg extensions, and, guys at the gym are like, looking at me like, what's this guy doing? Like, they see me in pain, but I'm
yeah,
like, wrap my arms or, let me wrap my legs or my calves and things like that. And I've noticed a difference. So it is going to be interesting to kind of see more of the science behind it of why it's actually working.
yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the more, we'll go into a couple more things with the, you're known for a lot of these crazy sets and basically crazy training methods that you do with, supersets and monster sets, or, doing, this and, an antagonist, all these different movements, what's kind of, how did that build and how do you use a lot of that within your training program of the base of everything and then adding those crazy methods on top of it?
Well, the first thing the first thing people have to realize is that there are several different ways to cause muscular hypertrophy. It's not just progressive overload. I think people have been kind of stymied in their thinking, and when you talk about growing, all people talk about is progressive overload. Progressive overload is absolutely a great way to grow, no doubt about it, but it's not the only way. And if you solely rely on progressive overload, it's diminishing returns. You can only add so much weight to your bench every week. You can only add, you can't add weight infinitum or people will be benching 2,000 pounds. It just doesn't work that way. So what do you do when you hit a roadblock? I see people, I can't get any stronger now, so that must mean my workouts suck. No, you don't have to get stronger every single workout. There are other methods that can make your muscle grow. So what are these other methods? Well, bodybuilders are a great case study because bodybuilders have trained in different rep ranges. They've done supersets. They've done, partials, negatives, all this stuff that I like to do. Bodybuilders have been doing this for decades. And it's not necessarily progressive overload. It's more a result of the pump and all the things that are going on with the pump. And if you're interested actually in finding out the latest in science behind what the pump really is, one of my friends, Brad Schoenfeld, if you look him up, has a great paper on it. But he gets into cellular cell swelling and all the things that happen in a muscle while it's pumping that can potentially cause growth. So what I like to do is I do incorporate progressive overload in my plans. If you don't increase in weight, though, I will tell you it's not the end of the world. My version of progressive overload is just do the best you can with that phase. So if I say do 6 reps, and I want your 6th rep to be hard, that's all I care about. I don't care that the week before you did 225, and if this week you only did 220, I care about you executed with perfect form and you went as hard as you could go. There are so many factors that are involved. Maybe somebody didn't have a good night's sleep the night before. Maybe the first exercise you did wore you out a little bit more than the previous week. There are a lot of factors that go into strength and getting that last rep and being able to move up in weight. I don't worry about all that. I worry about effort. Effort. How hard did you work? If you did 225 for 6 one week, the next week you did 235 for 6, but it was easy, and I told you to go hard, that's not a success to me. I wanted the 6th rep to be hard.
Yeah.
So it's about effort to me. I don't care about the weight. If the effort's there, muscle growth will happen. Now, if you're training for pure strength, then this is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about hypertrophy. So that's a part of the program. Then the other part of the program, usually the third exercise is where we tie this in. That's what we're going to use, an exercise where we just go all out for pump. I want as much blood in the muscle as we can possibly get. The biggest pump in the muscle we can. I want your arms so pumped you can't even move them. I want your legs so pumped you can't even pick your heel up to do a standing leg curl. And typically we'll work up to this crazy set that you see Dave and I doing. So if we do 3 sets of something, the 3rd set will be the one that you see us doing where we do a drop set and then we maybe add partials, then we add isotension, just annihilating the muscle, absolutely annihilating the muscle. All of the way I structure all this is very strategic, though. There's an exercise that precedes the basic exercise, for a squat, for example, to get the muscle. It's kind of an extended warm up. It's to drive nutrients into the muscle, but it's also to prevent injuries. And when you're doing a heavy exercise, I want you to feel it in muscle tissue. I don't want you to feel it in connective tissue. If you do a bench press, I want you to tell me, man, my pecs are on fire. I don't want you to tell me, man, it feels like my tendon's going to rip off. So everything is set up strategically. Then once we get that good heavier work out of the way, then we go to the pump work. And then there's actually another phase after that. Now, once you get a muscle pumped to the max, then you can use a full range of motion and really stretch the muscle. And you start applying this stretch. That's also very anabolic. There's a lot of theories on why, is it just protein synthesis? Is it just a protective mechanism to that full stretch? We don't know. We don't know for sure, but there's some good data on that as well, on what a stretch does. So all of this stuff is set up in a way to take advantage of every possible method for hypertrophy. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make the muscle grow in every way possible.
Mm.
And that's how I can get guys that are advanced in their 30s. Maybe they haven't put on any muscle for 5 years, but all of a sudden we can put 20 pounds of muscle on them in 6 months. That's how we do it. There's no miracle drug. I didn't discover a new drug, a new designer drug. The guys that were taking drugs, I didn't have them change anything. The guys that weren't, I didn't add drugs to their mix. It's careful nutrition, and it's very methodical training. But more than anything, it takes heart. It takes somebody that can do those hard sets and just unleash. I mean, just go to another level and just unleash. You know, this is the cool thing about what I do. I get to work with a lot of top guys. You know, we just had Evan Sinapani in about a month ago, actually, and we did a couple sets, and he got sick and started puking. And it wasn't because we were doing 50 reps on a squat and then we ran over to the leg press. I mean, that'll make anybody puke. That's just poor programming. It was the intensity was so hard during his last set, it actually made him puke from pure intensity. When you can get to that level and train like that, as long as your nutrition is on point, man, your body can do some amazing things. And you know, the thing about bodybuilding is, due to the chemicals involved, people are able to make progress with substandard nutrition and substandard training. But you know, they did make progress, so they think, well, that's all you need to do. You know, whereas my approach is, okay, so you're going to take chemicals, that's fine, whatever, that's your decision. But what if we then, on top of that, used perfect nutrition and perfect training and just really try to maximize it? And then, now you got a case where you can take a guy that can all of a sudden gain 20 pounds that's maybe been stuck for 5 years because he maximized everything you can maximize. And that's the cool part of what I do is watching people. You know, I'll get these people to sign up and I'll look at them, and part of me is like, oh shit, how am I going to get this guy any bigger? This guy's a monster. You know, then the other part of me, the evil scientist, was like, oh, I got this figured out. I know what we're going to do. So it's pretty fun. But that's a little bit about the training aspect of what I do.
That's pretty awesome. I like that. So I know, you're busy, you got your stuff, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know we've been going for a little while here. So I will post up links, but also I asked everybody on the video, I know you got your new website, things like that. Where's the best for people to follow everything you're doing, check out the Mountain Dog Diet, the train, everything from that? What are the best links?
Yeah, my website, mountaindogdiet.com, has all the social media links at the top. I'm on Facebook. I got a personal page. I've also got a business page, Mountain Dog Diet page. The personal page, honestly, is where right now I post the most. I am on Twitter, but the best place to really follow me, I am on Instagram, is probably Facebook. But check out my website, check out Facebook, and you'll get a little better idea of kind of what we're doing, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Perfect. And I know you just brought on someone new to your team, correct?
Yeah, I just hired Matt Berzicott. Matt is a fantastic bodybuilder in his own right. That's not why I hired him. But he's an awesome coach. I've got two coaches that work for me now that are absolutely just brilliant guys. One of them, Alexander Cortez, writes for Elite FTS. I've always thought the way he put his thoughts together and the way he thought logically were very good. And he's also very good to his clients, and that means a lot to me. And Matt Berzicott is the same way. Matt's been a client, so I've got to know how he thinks. And Matt also has been coaching people for a while. So I know how he treats people. I know how he thinks. And these guys are two of the best guys I've found. I'm hoping to hire some more people, but I'm very, it took me 2 years just to hire Alexander. That's how picky I am.
Yeah.
but these guys are really good. They help me out. I'm always at about a 12-week. I'm usually about 12 weeks behind with new clients. So if somebody wants to get started, then these guys will usually start, if they're in a hurry, then they'll work with these guys. And, knock on wood, every experience that somebody's had with those two guys so far has been good. But to better my record. So
Yeah. That
they're
was
doing it.
my follow up with that too. Is people that want to get a hold of you and want to start doing the training and the dieting and all that. Is there availability, or what are their options basically?
Yeah, go to the programs tab on my website and you'll see all the different programs. The nutrition ones are the ones that take me a while to get to because I put so much time into building them. The training ones, you can get started rather quickly. I'm always building new training programs that incorporate new knowledge as I learn. And I've got ways that we can tweak it for people's different weaknesses, but it doesn't require an entire rewrite. Every one of those programs takes me a minimum of 40 hours to write.
Wow.
40 hours minimum. So I've got it set up in a way that you can add days and you can do things to work on poor, body parts that need some extra assistance. But the base programs are brutal and they work. I don't have anyone say, hey, this isn't hard enough, or. So I've been, they're really good. I'm working on my 17th program right now that I'm building. Every 13 weeks, basically, I launch a new one, and again, it's training is my passion. So as I learn, as I'm investigating and learning, I'm always building it into new programs. It's a constant evolution. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, perfect. And like I said, I'll post up links, but it seems like it pretty much, which is good. You got everything on the Mountain Dog Diet website,
Yep.
so people can find everything from there. So I'll link that up. Everybody kind of knows if they want to check out more what the availability or time weight is. So that's perfect. And anything on the end you want to add for anybody?
No, the only thing I would say is that I am competing in 4 weeks in New York at the Team Universe. So if you're out there in that area, please support me. I promise you I'll be in good shape. And I promise I'll be pretty ferocious and beastly. So
I've heard, I saw a few pictures, a couple days ago on Facebook, and then I've heard people say like, watch out.
yeah. Well, all the hard work is hopefully going to pay off. So
You go out with a bang on that one. So
yeah, that's the plan.
perfect. I appreciate I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're extremely busy, and this was awesome. I know a lot of people are going to get great info out of this.
All right, my pleasure.
All right, thanks a lot, John. Have a good day. And hey, I know you're going to go do the legs now with some of the occlusion training.
Yes, sir. Bring it on.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.